There has been very little talk about raising taxes in tomorrow's budget. What taxes specifically would the Social Democrats like to see raised?
Well, we'd like to see taxes raised in relation to sugar tax. I think there's potential for raising further taxes in relation to excise on alcohol, on cigarettes. We believe that there's a need for reform of the pension tax relief, which is available to high earners, and there's potential for raising about 120 million euro.
Specifically, would you like to see the tax relief cut to the lower level for people earning above a certain amount and paying higher rates of tax?
Well, it's been our view for some time that we should really operate within the existing income tax system. I don't think there's scope for reducing income taxes at the moment, and certainly if you look at the kind of phony war that we've seen between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael over recent weeks, you know, what they're talking about is minimal changes to the tax system, which will result in workers on average incomes getting an extra €1 or €2 per week. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, that's nonsense. That's not going to make any difference to anybody, really. And the argument that we'd make is that the government would be much better off, and it would be much better for everybody if they concentrated the funding that is available on cutting the cost of living and improving our services, so that, you know, rather than getting an extra couple of quid in your pocket every week, wouldn't it be much better if we started the move towards universal health care, if we reduce the cost of private health insurance, for example, if we reduce the cost of sending children to school, if we reduce the cost of transport fares, for example, a whole range of things that you could do like that would be, you know, so in people's interests. And
you would prefer to see an improvement in services rather than an extra couple of years.
And reducing the cost of living.
Can I bring you in here, Eamon Ryan, leader of the Green Party? You've heard some of what Roisin Shortall has had to say about what she would like to see and her party would like to see in tomorrow's budget. What would the Greens be looking for ideally?
We're looking to do things differently. I mean, I think listen, it's very welcome. For the first time in about 10 years, we're going back to a balanced budget. In other words, from Britain, there's as much money coming in as there is going out, and that we're nearing full employment, and that our economy is growing. And that's all that's to be welcomed. But the fear we have is that it might slightly just bring us back to the same situation we were in the early 2000s, you know, where actually then you would have an overheating economy. It's all about the business. It's all about economic growth. It's all about that sort of model, and what that leads is just higher and higher property prices, and everyone thinking that we're better off, but actually paying all the money we have in higher mortgage and higher rent. Surely, having got into and then got out of this recent economic crisis, we won't create the same conditions that got us into it in the first place. So, doing things differently, a variety of different ideas around it. Firstly, when it comes to housing, yes, we need to increase investment in housing massively. But rather than the old way of doing it, where, let's say, social housing was done, where the Department of Environment gives a lump of cash to a local authority and says, go away and build a house now with that. Instead, what we want to do is to what's called this cost rental model of social housing, where the local authority or the housing association is able to borrow. And in borrowing, it's not going on the state borrowing balance sheet, so you can actually expand it beyond the fiscal space. And that you have a whole range of different tenants in that social housing, so it's a real mixed development. And if someone can't afford it, then you kind of top up their rent rather than us kind of subsidising the private rented sector at the moment. We support the local authority or the housing association. And in that, you get a really mixed, high quality social housing, and you can fund it. And it's different to the current model, but we need to do things differently.